can't I ever buy anything that runs? I was doing all the work. Oh man, I gotta do more cardio. Well, even though I had to push it into the garage, I cannot even pretend to be mad about my new project here. Behind me is a 2004 Mustang Cobra. It is my latest project and the latest project for the channel. And I'd say 90% of you guys probably already know everything there is to know about this very iconic Mustang, very iconic sports car. But just in case you don't, what is the Mustang Cobra? Specifically, what is the 2003 and 2004 Mustang Cobra, aka Terminator? How did it come to be? What are its roots? The development of the 2003 Mustang Cobra actually starts back in 1999. 99 Mustang was the brand new edge body style of the SN95 chassis. The Cobra specifically featured a new independent rear suspension, dual overhead cam, aluminum block, naturally aspirated 4.6 liter, 320 horsepower V8. Which seemed like it should be pretty impressive. By the time the magazines and car and driver and test facilities got their hands on the Cobra, the results were less than spectacular.
The special vehicle team's Cobra runs a far more sophisticated engine, spotting the GMF body's 65 cubic inches, but winding higher with 32 valves and 4 cams to make its 320 horses. But the power's not readily available.
The odd thing is that we don't really see it on the track, and you don't really feel it in the seat of your pants either. It's still impressive. The engine makes great noises, but it doesn't have the real broad, brawny torque band of the F-bodies, and it shows. You have to wind this engine out in order to get the power out of it.
And by the time you find the power, you've lost. This Cobra needed 6 full seconds to 60, while the Camaro and Firebird could make the jump in 5.3.
I'd still rather have the engine of the other two vehicles, despite the fact that it's not as sophisticated.
As a matter of fact, the Cobra was advertised at 320 horsepower, but many customers found that they put out significantly less than that on the chassis dyno and engine dynos, to the point that Ford actually had to recall all of the 99 Mustang Cobras to fix an intake and exhaust restriction that was causing it to put down less than the advertised horsepower. Because of this, the 2000 model year Cobra was canceled, with the exception of the ultra rare and completely different 2000 Cobra R, which was basically a full-blown race car. There was no 2000 model year Cobra. By 2001, Ford had fixed the intake and exhaust problem and the Cobra was back, and that's kind of where the development of the Terminator really starts. Enter John Coletti, who is the director of SVT, or Ford's Special Vehicle Team. John was actually out testing the prototype 2002 Mustang Cobra, and he was basically appalled with the performance. There's actually a story that says the Focus SVT was able to keep up with the 2002 Mustang Cobra. He was so frustrated to the point that he basically said, "Let's throw this all away and let's start from scratch." So up until now, the Mustang Cobra was kind of a joint development between SVT and Ford. For the 2003 Mustang Cobra program, SVT had full control. John wanted to develop something that was going to blow the competition away, or terminate the competition between the Camaro and the Firebird. Hence, the project name Terminator was born.
Forget it. The debates are over. Whatever your pony car loyalties may be, the 2003 Cobra and the Mustang faithful who will drive it win. Period. End of discussion.
This ends all the debates. This car was intended to come to hit the market, give the customers everything they've been clamoring for some time now, and on the competitive front, just end the debate, terminate the discussions.
So they basically went and completely redid the powertrain, They robbed the engine block from the 99 Plus Ford Lightning, which is an iron block. They had to use a forged crank. They ended up getting Manley H-beam forged connecting rods because they were testing these motors with the stock rods and they were lasting like a couple hours before they blew up. Forged Zollner pistons, and of course the supercharger to top it all off, and thus the Terminator engine was born. 390 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque was the advertised output. But it turns out that Ford actually pretty grossly underrated this motor. A lot of guys were putting these on the dynos back in 2003 and found that they were putting down 390 to 400 at the wheel, which is well over 400 to the flywheel. 390 horsepower and 390 foot-pounds of torque, which was unheard of from a Mustang back in 2003. By the time the magazines and test facilities got their hands on the 03 Cobra, the story was a lot different this time.
What we have here is Corvette-level performance, way past Camaro. 0 to 60 in 4.5, and a 12-second quarter mile at 111 miles per hour. Actually quicker than the Corvette coupe. Incredible. But in a way, the power solution was obvious, with SVT's experience with the 385-horse Lightning, thanks to the Eaton blower on that V8.
Behind the motor was a new T56 6-speed manual, a redesigned independent rear suspension. The design of the 03 and 04 Cobra was by Camilo Pardo, who's the same guy that designed the Ford GT. New front bumper, side skirts, mirrors, hood, rear bumper, spoiler. It was a completely different car. And with that, an American icon was born. The Cobra immediately had a cult following, and 20 plus years later, it still does. Owners were immediately doing a smaller blower pulley, an exhaust, and a tune, and getting, almost 500 horsepower to the tire, which was absolutely insane back then, and still today is considered pretty fast. Add to that the limited production of the Terminator, just over 19,000 units, only in 2003 and 2004. It's absolutely an American icon and has a pretty strong cult following today. If you're interested in the full history of the 2003 Cobra development, I highly recommend you read the book Iron Fist, Lead Foot. It's basically the entire John Coletti story of the 03 and 04 Terminator, and also the last book I've read since high school, so check it out if you guys are interested in this kind of stuff. I remember being 16 years old just after I got my license, going on the very, very early YouTube and watching videos of Terminators. By the time 2012 rolled around, I was finally able to afford my first one. It was a 2004 Torch Red, had a pulley, exhaust, tune, an awful set of bullet wheels on it, made 475 horsepower to the rear tires, and was an absolute blast. Drove it like that for a year or two until I got bored with the power and skipped all the superchargers like Whipples and Kenny Bells and all that stuff that most guys did. Went right into a full-blown turbo build. By the end of the build, the car ended up putting down over 800 horsepower to the tire on a completely stock internal 2004 Cobra long block. Just an awesome testament to the strength of the motor that Ford put out. I made more than double the power that it left the factory with, put 15,000 miles on it, and beat the snot out of it. And never had any issues until the day I sold it. Who knows, maybe one day I'll find that car again. But for now, let's get back to the video.
But let's get into this car specifically. This is a 2004 Ford Mustang Cobra. Exterior paint is screaming yellow. One of 299 made in a coupe in this color. So, but I believe behind competition orange, this is the second most rare Terminator color. So extremely rare color. The only other yellow that was made for these cars was in 2003, and that was zinc yellow, and it was much lighter, and in my opinion, this is the much better color. I'm not really a yellow guy, but I gotta say, this is really growing on me right here, this screaming yellow. Why doesn't this thing run? Why did we have to push it into the garage? So yeah, as you can see, we're missing a couple components in the engine. The engine is there, but it's missing some stuff, so it doesn't run. So the story with the car is, I have a thread on the SVT Performance forum, for those of you guys that still know what forums are. I know Facebook has kind of taken over these days, but forums were an awesome source of information back in the day, and they still are, and SVT Performance is one of them. Anyways, I have a thread up on there saying, hey, looking for 03, 04 Cobra project cars. Bought a couple of them that way over the years, and I've really been looking for one for the channel, and this one, I'm so glad that it fell into my lap. I'm so glad I found it. But the story goes, the gentleman that owned it before me had started a Gen 5 Whipple build. So he pulled off the stock supercharger, lower intake, intercooler, and had started his Whipple builds. And at that time, he ran into some financial issues, more so that he needed to make the right decision to support his family, which really says a lot about his character. He was willing to sell the Whipple that he had just saved up for to, take care of his family, and then figured that he could get back on the build once he was past those times. But unfortunately, some other stuff came up, and long story short, he was kind of forced to sell the car as is, which obviously doesn't bring top market dollar for the car. Couldn't have asked for a better guy to buy the car from him. We'll get into more of that in a second, but taking a loss on the car to support his family really shows the kind of character that this guy had. So good on him. John, if you're watching this, you're a good guy. So yeah, that's where we're at. The car is missing a couple components. We'll get into that, but let's kind of do a quick walk around here. So if the video's not already showing it, this is probably the cleanest 04 Cobra or 03 Cobra I've ever owned. I mean, there is just not a defect on it. The paint is, as far as I can tell, basically perfect everywhere. The wheels, these are the original 17-inch chrome wheels, and they don't have a single mark on them. None of the chrome is pitting. They're, got some dust and stuff. This is as the car came off the carrier, and it's been sitting in the guy's garage for months without a wash. So this has got dust on it, dirt, you name it, and it still looks this good. Look at the door jambs. Immaculate. Guys got the mirrors taped up. This is funny to show how anal this guy was with this car. He's got painter's tape over the hood vents to keep dust out of the engine bay, which, take a look at that. I mean, literally looks like it just came off the assembly line in late 2003. Look at the front, where all these cars are going to get rock chips. Nothing. That's dirt. This thing is immaculate. You notice the interior, equally as clean. Got the charcoal seats, which I believe is the only color seat that was available with this paint in 2004, in mint condition. And the back seat is full of parts. The trunk is full of parts. Got some other parts right there. Previous owner included a lot of parts with this car. Stuffed the car to the brim, a couple extra totes that went with the shipper, and we'll get into those as well. Jams, absolutely perfect. Just an immaculate 2004 Mustang. I mean, we'll get this thing up on the lift at some point, but underside equally as clean. You can see the return fuel system there, which we'll get into in a minute. Super clean. So yeah, that's a quick walk around, but I've been dying to get into this car, get all these parts unpacked, so not only I can see the full interior, but also see what kind of parts we're dealing with. So let's unpack the rear, unpack the trunk, get these totes unpacked, see what kind of parts we're dealing with. right, got all this stuff unpacked, and just look at all this. All this was either in the car or in those two totes, so lots of extra parts included with the car. Another testament to the previous owner. Most of this stuff is labeled. Looks like he didn't throw away anything, which is awesome to see on a car like this. We'll start over here. Got an aftermarket set of Cobra floor mats like those. The stock hood prop, because this car has MRT hood struts, which is nice. So no more hood prop. In here, I believe, is a triple A-pillar pod for gauges. There's already a double one in the car. Stock injectors, various harnesses. I believe this is a, what is this, an idle air control valve probably. Stock pulleys. The motor has a full set of billet flow idlers, fuel filters, oil filters, various fuel line fittings. I believe these are the fuel pressure driver modules. This looks like an aftermarket one. There's the stock one labeled with mileage and date. Fuel rail bolts, stock shifter. I believe there's a MGW in there. This is an aftermarket supercharger expansion tank. I think the stock one's over there right now. Brand new in the box, innovative wideband. 2 air filters, intake tube, stock taillight harness, because this car has smoked taillights and headlights, which personally I'm not a fan of, which makes me extremely happy about these boxes right here. These are the OEM stock taillights still in the box, and even better, the OEM Ford stamped headlights. And this might not seem very exciting to some of you guys, but if you know what the mint condition OEM Ford black housing headlights are worth, you'll know why these are important. These things can go for like, I don't know, $800 to $1,000, and the quality is just so much better than all the aftermarket ones you can get on eBay. So very happy to have those with the stock taillights. Be getting those in soon enough. Stock coil covers, because it's got those Terminator ones on there. Stock heat exchanger. This is most of your evap and EGR hose fittings. I believe these are coolant, like supercharger coolant lines, I think. Fuel line hoses, because this car has a full return fuel system. And here's the big ticket item. The main component that this car is missing is our Eaton supercharger. It's got a 2.81 aftermarket pulley on it. Story with this is the guy sold it to his buddy who had a Mach 1 and was going to do an Eaton swap on it. He ended up not doing anything with it. So right before I bought the car, he got it back for me. So now we have the original blower to this car that's basically ready to go back on. In here, we've got more fuel line fittings, the stock mint condition pulley cover. Again, this might, come on now, let go. This might not seem that cool to some people, but this is one of those pieces that a lot of people probably threw away as soon as they put an aftermarket pulley on a car. And these are worth good money too. Good to have with the car. Stock fuel rails, more, evap sensors and solenoids. Stock throttle bodies in there, stock plenum, here's your EGR valve, stock fuel pump and hats. We'll have to go through more of this stuff later, but some good stuff in here. Various hoses in there. There's our SVT X4 tuner, Gates green belt, NGK spark plugs, just tons and tons of good parts over here. I hope this guy's wife isn't watching. He included, to protect the seats while he shipped a lot of this stuff in the car in boxes, to protect the seats from the boxes, all sorts of towels and blankets. So hopefully his wife's not mad about that, or she didn't notice that they're gone. Maybe we'll send those back to him if he needs them. But also, check this stuff out. All this stuff was wrapped in towels in the front seat. Got our original window sticker, framed. These cars there weren't a lot of options available. They pretty much came as is. I think really the only options you could get was the chrome wheels. The standard option would have been a brushed 17-inch SVT 5-spoke wheel. The chrome was a $695 option. Honestly, I don't think there was any other options available on these cars. I think that was pretty much it. Got our birth certificate here, and then some of the original memorabilia that you would have had in the dealership back in 2003 and 2004. I think this is a brochure. Yeah, there's a couple pages. I might have to get this out and look at it. But here's the front side of this little one-pager, back side listing all the specs in the car. And then I think this is the general 04 Mustang brochure. All framed with the car. Super cool. Over here we've got the dyno sheet. Looks like this thing was tuned at Blankenship. I believe these guys are a pretty reputable name in the Cobra community. So this is when it was still an Eaton car, I believe. So it looks like it made 499 torque, 488 horsepower, which is pretty standard and good power for a basically pulleyed Eaton car. And then over here, I won't get into too many details on this because we don't want to show the guy's address or anything, but a stack of receipts for all the aftermarket parts on this car. This was all in the front seat as well. So lots of money, lots of receipts saved, all documented. Also, this book, this is powered by SVT, which basically goes over all the SVT vehicles still in the plastic, with this letter from Tom Scarpello, which is the marketing and sales manager for SVT. So yeah, here's where we're at with parts and everything else that came in the car. So now we can get a decent look at the interior. More of the same as how the outside looks. Absolutely immaculate. Charcoal seats, pretty standard. I mean, these cars get a bad rep. All the people that review them always complain about the interior, but I mean, come on. It's an 04 Mustang that they shoved a very expensive motor into, T56 6-speed manual. What do you want for the interior? No one buys these cars for the interior. The seats are nice though, good bolster support. You got the suede in the center with the Cobra insignia there. Same thing in the back. But yeah, it is dark in here, but completely mint. You guys get the idea. So inside, outside, you guys seen it. Let's check out the engine bay. So here's our 4.6 liter iron block, 32 valve Terminator long block, basically. Right off the bat, I can see that we're missing, obviously, the supercharger because it's over there. But below that, there's an intercooler and then also a lower intake that connects to our cylinder heads here. So those are the three main components that we're missing right now. Then obviously, you know, fuel rails, injectors, some fuel lines, throttle body, intake, air filter, which most of that is over there. But I do definitely need a lower intake and intercooler. Other than that, up here we've got some sort of aftermarket coolant crossover. Billet flow idlers, those are super nice. We've got a Gates green belt. Looks like we got a stock lower pulley down there. Let me get a light. Yeah, stock lower pulley cage. Everything else looks pretty stock here. Those Terminator coil covers. And here's the aftermarket return style fuel system that's on this car. I believe it's Division X or Lethal Performance or whatever. So basically there's two 255 Walboro pumps in the tank, air motive regulator, and then a dual feed to what would have been a Gen 5 Whipple setup up here. But I'm going to see if we can't convert this to run on the stock setup for now. Shouldn't be a problem, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Anyways, other than that, this is extremely clean up here. Other than those components, I really don't see anything missing. Previous owner did a great job taping off the intake ports, oil caps, all that to make sure that the motor stays nice and clean. So I think we're in good shape there. Also, I can't believe I haven't mentioned it yet. One of the best parts about this car is the mileage, and I got to show you. But I need to pull the fuel pump fuse, which I've just done because this is a return style fuel system. So as soon as the key's on, it's pumping fuel wide open. Ask me how I know. When I got the car off the truck, I soaked my driveway in 7 gallons of 93 octane because it was just pumping out of those dual feeds right there in the engine bay. Just came shooting right out of there, right into the intake valley there. So that was nice. So I think that's the fuel pump fuse I took out. I'll hook up the battery and I'll show you. So with any luck now, hopefully the fuel pump won't come on, soak my garage. Yeah, we're good. Check it out. 21,700 original miles on this thing. Oh yeah, the light's on. Got your signature SVT green glow from the 90s. Love it. See, I believe the previous owner said this thing's got LEDs everywhere too. Yep, looks like we got LED taillights. That looks nice. Let's pop those foggies on. Oh yeah, sweet. But yeah, 21,000 original miles on this thing. I mean, the condition shows it, but what a peach. What an absolute peach. Well, since I got them right here, I'm trying to get organized in the garage. Let's do our first mod, or in this case, D-mod on this car. Let's get those tinted headlights, tinted taillights out. swap them out for the original headlights and taillights, and yeah, get right to work on this car. Much better. Got the taillights in and OEM headlights. OEM black housing headlights. Looks awesome. Like I said, nothing really against tinted taillights or headlights. I just, in this particular car, I think it looks better with the OEM headlights. I like the red taillights that kind of break up the rear end a little bit. Turns out the taillights were sequential. Tried to get those to work with the OEM housings, but these LEDs that are in here are cheap, and they, half of them weren't working, and I just gave up. Decided to go back to the original halogen bulbs with the exception of reverse light, put the LEDs in there so we get nice bright reverse lights. So I got the original taillight harness back in. So now I can sell all this as a complete LED sequential kit. Probably want to get some new LEDs, but taillights, headlights, done. All right, so headlights and taillights are done, which is great, but car still doesn't run. So I think we should shift our priorities to getting what we need to get this thing running. So I just made a list. Let's check it out. So here's what we got on my notepad here. So key components here, like I mentioned earlier, lower intake. We're gonna need the intercooler that bolts to the bottom of the supercharger that kind of drops in that valley right there. We're gonna need the flow tubes that come through basically up out of here and then go down into the heat exchanger, which is tucked in the bumper down there. Gonna need the gaskets for the lower intake down here. There's another gasket, if I remember correctly, that goes between the supercharger and the heat exchanger. I've been out of the Cobra game for a while now. Been more LS and LS swapped stuff, but it's all coming back. I'm remembering where certain gaskets were. I obviously took all of the supercharger stuff off to turbo my Tortoretto 4, so I'm very familiar with this stuff. It's been like 10 years, but it'll come back. Anyways, I'm pretty sure there's a gasket between supercharger and the heat exchanger. And I think that's most of the main stuff we're gonna need. Obviously, I have the supercharger, I have most of the intake components, I have the stock fuel injectors. The only thing that we might need to just kind of get into the assembly and go from there is how I'm gonna connect this return style fuel system either to the stock fuel rails or maybe order a set of aftermarket fuel rails that are compatible with the Eaton supercharger. We'll see, but basically just need to get the fuel from there to the fuel rails. Right now, I think that's about it. Not too much. I already have a lead on the lower intake, intercooler, and flow tubes, which are like the, obviously discontinued parts that you can't just go out and buy. So those are the big ones. I already have those, a lead on those, and probably be shipped out this week. So really just need gaskets and some other minor stuff. So with any luck, it will not be long before we got this thing running again. And this Terminator will be back on the streets. So that's gonna do it for this video. Hope you guys are excited about this project as I am. I'm so happy to be back in a Cobra and just really excited to get to work on this thing. So stay tuned for the next one. We'll have this thing running before you know it. More to come in the Camaro, Corvette, everything else. Spring is here. It's time to get the cars going. Thank you guys as always for watching. Hope to see you in the next video.